So DEI is not about us. Like sometimes people, I've seen it in posts and articles, there are people who are believing the lie that DEI, affirmative action, is just about picking some random unqualified Black person just to put them in a position and they don't know what they're doing. And that's not what it is. It's just those things were set up just so that when qualified people of color apply for a position, that they are being held accountable for at least considering that application and placing that person in the same process any other applicant would be put through and considered in the same way. So basically, if you don't hire a Black person for a position or put him in a position and you choose a white person who has less qualifications, less experience, then you can be held accountable for that. That's the way it's supposed to work. That is the intention of it. So when Montgomery County came to Howard, it was their way of saying, listen, we know we haven't been really looking at Black applicants who've applied here. So we are publicly showing that we are reaching out to the Black community to come work here because historically we just don't really consider Black people. And we have to get out of acting like that history of discrimination against people of color and women and people with special needs or what have you, we need to stop acting like that never happened. There has never been a process in America to change the heart of America to stop doing that. Okay, and so when I went to Montgomery County, I was an explicit DEI hire. And I really enjoyed those 6 years. I learned a lot. I grew a lot as an educator. I got to work for some really great African-American principals who really mentored me and showed me what it means to be a good teacher. And I'm thankful that I had that opportunity. And so America has been set up to keep us from opportunities. And DEI, affirmative action, all those things will put into place to try to open the door. And it has been flawed. It hasn't been done well. It's almost like asking the slave master to turn around and start treating his slaves equally without any type of repair of what's been going on in his mind and heart. And I think that's why it didn't work. I think America keeps doing these programs and Band-Aids to fix something that's much more deep in the DNA. And we need to think about, well, how do we change the heart of people so that we can really root out racism? So that was my experience as a DEI hire in public schools. And I don't regret it. And not once do I ever feel like I didn't belong or didn't deserve to be there. I was qualified to be there, just as qualified as I had really high scores on my praxis exam. I had taught in different ways. I had worked as a teacher's aide while I was working my way through college. My observing teacher and my student teacher gave me really good reviews. I was an honor student. I was in the honor society. I had a really high GPA. I graduated cum laude. I deserved to be in Montgomery County. So every time I see when someone looks at a Black person hired in a position, a lot of times you notice they say, oh, that's a DEI hire, if that person is working in a space where Black people typically did not work. And so instead of saying the N-word, they don't even know what qualifications the person has. They just look at their color and say, there's no way this person could ever be qualified or good enough to be there because only white people are good enough to be in that space. That is what we're saying. Now, have sometimes people taken DEI and affirmative action and done hurtful things to other people? Has it been imbalanced and misused? Absolutely. But Reconstruction was also flawed. I think the thing that hurts me is that the heart behind Reconstruction was to try to fix America's sin. And instead, what they should have done is gone back each year and revised it. As they learned in the process things that did and didn't work, go back and redo it. Invite people to the conversation to figure out how to make Reconstruction better. Instead, racists just came in and scrapped it. And before long, Jim Crow and lynchings were just the very definition of American life. My greatest fear about the ending of DEI and affirmative action, even though I found it flawed, was that by just scrapping it and now having this conversation, just get rid of it. That means we're not continuing the conversation on how do we make ourselves better. And I am worried about what's the spirit that's going to be ushered in now. Just like Jim Crow came in when Andrew Johnson ended Reconstruction. Now that affirmative action, DEI, those efforts that for decades have been happening to try to get us closer and closer to what we should be as a nation, now that's just being taken out. And I'm not hearing, we're removing this because it was flawed, but here's an alternative. Here's a new plan that is not just a plan that just white people created, but it's a plan that was created in collaboration with all different people groups to figure out a healthier way forward. And so what that means is that we've scrapped what America had in place to try to fix the damage that Jim Crow did. And all that can be ushered in now without an alternative is white supremacy again. And what will that look like for us? And my hope is that America will remember we did take steps forward. Yes, things were flawed. They were not perfect, but it doesn't mean we give up. We go back and we try to fix and do it better. So we don't find ourselves constantly going backwards, forwards, backwards, forward. At what point do we want to come together to really move forward? When do we stop this fight for supremacy, right? I think one of the flaws that happened with DEI and with George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement and affirmative action, it turned into this effort. And I'm nervous to say this, but it's almost like we did so much to prove our equality, we kind of started wanting to do more to prove our supremacy, to the point where people were actually being hurt by these things that were created to heal. And somebody may be hearing this and say, why do you care about hurting those who've oppressed us? I can only say that as a Christian, we are to do unto others as we would have them do unto us. And so I do think that with the racism already here in America, with that moment in time, especially after George Floyd's unaliving, we really, and Black Lives Matter came up, anti-racism came up, and we began to take those things meant to heal the nation, and we began to almost look like the people who have hurt us. So my question is, how do we create programs that really address the racism that exists? It is still here in a way where we all are created equal, where we all desire authentic healing, and we all desire to become more of what America should be. I don't know. I know my voice is only going to be heard by a couple hundred people, if that, but those are my thoughts. And my experience with DEI hasn't been good. My experience with affirmative action has never been a positive experience. I've always endured rejection. Those who were forced to accept me were angry at my presence. And I spent all of my years in those spaces constantly fighting against hate. If I were to do it over, I would say, can we do it in a way that people will be more open to it? It's more gracious, and it's done in a way that doesn't place people in such toxic environments, because people don't want to let go of their racism and white supremacy. And I don't know how that's done. But those are my thoughts. That was my experience. And we'll keep the conversation going.